Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, I've got an exciting topic because you know that one of my favorite topics to talk about is masculine and feminine energy. And I've got another expert who's also into this topic. Her name is Keshia Rice, and she's a dating coach and hypnotherapist. So thank you very much, Keshia, for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Lyn. I'm so excited.
So how to balance our feminine and masculine energies? I mean, why do you think this is important for people to know?
I think that this is really important because, first of all, we are both masculine and feminine. And people hear that and they balk a little bit because they're like, oh, well, like, I'm a man, so I can't have feminine energy, or I'm a woman, so I can't be masculine. And particularly, I'm a millennial, so I'm chronically online. There's so much talk about femininity coaches and these women telling other women, you're too masculine. The reason why you don't have a man, the reason why you don't have the relationship you want is because you're too masculine. These energies work together. I always tell my clients that masculine energy is structure and feminine energy is flow. And understanding how important that is in all the areas of our life. For example, I set boundaries with family members, with friends, with my husband, and that is a very masculine thing. That is a structure that sets parameters for how my relationships operate. But because that structure is set, it's so much easier for me to flow in those relationships, to be nurturing, to hold space for other people, to be present in the moment, because that structure is in place. So we have to have that balance.
Absolutely. And knowing when to use and default from one energy to another is also important, isn't it? Because obviously, if your man is wanting to be the man in your romantic relationship and wear the trousers, and you're also wanting to wear the trousers, that's where conflicts can arise if you're then in your masculine energy and he's feeling it. And that can feel confrontational, can't it?
Yeah. And all relationships thrive on polarity. Even when you talk about same-sex relationships, you have one person who in the relationship is more masculine and one person who is more feminine. And I like to emphasize that because there are relationships nowadays where, it's a heterosexual relationship and the woman is the more masculine and the man is the more feminine. And that's fine as long as the two of you understand, who has which role. And when you talk about that traditional, the man wants to wear the pants, that doesn't mean that, I'm married to a man who is more traditional. That doesn't mean that I shut up and sit in a corner and then let him take over everything. There are certain things that I'm better at than him. Like when it comes to money, for example, my husband is great at the day-to-day, month to month budget and all of that. And he does handle a lot of that. I am much better than him at like long-term planning, like thinking about our retirement and all of those things. So there are times where I'm going to take that masculine role and kind of take over something like that because I am better at it. But at the same time, I also understand that he likes to have that masculine role. He really likes to be that traditional provider, protector. And that means that I can be in a position where I get to receive, where I get to let him take that leadership role. And again, there's so much talk online about submission and all of that people look at in a negative light. I think as a woman, part of being happy in your masculine and feminine energy balance is allowing yourself to be intentional and to decide. I allow my husband to take over some things because I like him to. I'm doing it intentionally. If I want to take my power back, I can. it is understanding that we empower ourselves to not let things happen to us, is, allowing ourselves to take the forefront again. When I mentioned long-term financial planning, be like, hey, I love you and I think you're a great leader, but this is something I'm better at. So let me handle that. And it's understanding that you can have that play back and forth and that you can make intentional decisions about when you want to be in which energy.
Absolutely. And I feel that a lot of women, especially women who are in powerful positions, who have their own companies, who have their own businesses or are highly professionals in their career path, have to be in masculine energy to compete with men in that environment quite often. And quite often they don't know how to let go of that once they're out of that environment and actually don't believe that vulnerability can be their greatest strength in attracting a partner.
Yeah, there is a world where you're allowed to have the best of both worlds, where you're allowed to be high powered in your career and own a business or be a CEO at a company and operate in your masculine the majority of the time in that role, in that capacity. And you're also able to come home and allow yourself to receive. And one of the things that I find funny about this discussion is, again, so I work with women of faith, spiritual women. So I myself am Christian, but I have clients who are Christian, clients who are Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, clients who are very spiritual and woo. So, we spend so much time talking about receiving from a spiritual sense, from a faith sense or manifestation. And when you're talking about those things, you're talking about being in reception mode and feminine mode. You're talking about you want like this great life, you want to be at peace, you want to be happy, and you're asking constantly to receive. It's no different in a romantic relationship, allowing yourself to receive, allowing someone to help you and come through for you in those ways as well.
Absolutely. And I feel that quite often we're educated, and I think there's a misunderstanding around what equality actually means, since the women and the feminist organizations, I suppose, have had something to do with this, in that, equality doesn't mean being the same as men. It just means we want the equal opportunities and advantages that men have always had in terms of jobs, wages and, voting rights, etc., etc. So it isn't about educating women to be more like men or be the same as men. It's about educating women that, we can use our masculine energy when it's appropriate, depending on what environment we're in, but it isn't about acting or being like a man, is it?
No, feminism at its core is choice. So there's so much shaming of, I have to tell my clients all the time because a lot of them struggle with boundaries, with people pleasing, with things like that. And I have to oftentimes get it across to them, you are going to piss somebody off. And that is okay, right? Because feminism is about choice. So you can be a feminist and be a stay-at-home mother or a stay-at-home wife or stay-at-home girlfriend. You can be a feminist and you can be, quote unquote, boss babe with, your own empire and 100 employees. And people are going to say things about either of those decisions. But it is what makes you happy. And it is understanding that in having these choices, you also have these balances of energies too. Even a stay-at-home mother is the CEO of a household. So there's plenty of times where she has to operate in her masculine and make leadership decisions about what's happening inside the house. And even the female CEO of a Fortune 500 company has sometimes where she knows that in asking her team for help or in meeting with certain employees, she has to take a softer approach and she has to be a little bit more in her feminine. So your energies aren't destroyed by these choices. It is understanding that no matter what choice you make, you have to be, again, intentional about how you operate in it.
Yeah, and it's about educating and being more aware, that we have these energies at play and how are they impacting our relationships, be those romantic or otherwise, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's also being with a partner who, when we talk about romantic relationships, being with a partner who can, one, you can appreciate both sides in them, and they can appreciate both sides in you. So, we talk about feminine energy and feminism and people slamming different choices, but there's a lot of toxic masculinity that exists in our society as well. So, understanding that even though my husband, in my case, is a very traditional masculine man, there are times where he needs to be vulnerable. There are times where he, wants to operate a little bit more in his feminine energy. And I understand that that is not a weakness. In fact, I understand that there's a lot of emotional intelligence and maturity in being able to come to me when he has more vulnerable moments. And having a partner who, when you're a woman, understands that even if you have that more traditional heterosexual relationship, when you have a person who can love, appreciate, cherish, shower you with love, that feminine side of you, but also see the masculine side of you, like see you run a business, see you have accomplishments, and be proud of you and not think that it takes away from their shine. That is something that is incredibly valuable to have in a relationship.
Absolutely. I devised a 5 energies structure within my coaching business because I do believe we operate in 5 different energies, regardless of whether you're male or female, and regardless of your sexual orientation or preferences. So for me, I feel we will have both unhealthy and healthy feminine energy, unhealthy and healthy masculine energy, and also neutral energy where you're not really strongly in either one. And I feel that if you're in a relationship where you're not strongly in either one and both of you are in that space, that's probably where you've got just a friendship and no passion in a relationship. You're just in an
Definitely.
okay, this is, muddling along, okay, friendship type relationship. And I feel that we've been educated more, especially in more recent times, to be more in that neutral energy on the back of people misunderstanding what equality actually means. And that's why people are experiencing a lack of passion in relationships, because like you said earlier, it's the polarity between the masculine and the feminine energies present that create that passion.
Yeah. And this doesn't come from a place of judging, because let's just be completely real. People have different reasons for getting married. So there are people who are going to get married to someone just because they want the permanent companionship, right? They want somebody else in their home. And there are people who are going to get married for tax benefits and it's practical and all of that. So if that is your decision, then you do you. At the same time, to your point, I've definitely seen cases of couples where they say that that's what they're okay with, but they want that passion and they're trying so hard to be, especially when two people pleasers get together, they're trying so hard to be polite and not step over anyone's toes and make sure that everything is nice and even keeled. And when you have that, polarity, when you have that balance of masculine and feminine, yeah, sometimes you clash. But it's also the fact that you clash, sometimes it's also what makes the making up part more fun. And it's also knowing that you don't have to be stuck in these roles. And I do think particularly women become afraid of that sometimes. They're like, okay, if I say that I really want to be in my feminine in this relationship and I want the man to quote unquote be a man and be more masculine, I'm never going to be able to speak my opinion. I'm never going to be heard. I'm never going to be in a position where I can take charge. And, that's where good communication comes in as a couple, is being able to say, like, yeah, 80% of the time I like to be the feminine in this relationship, but sometimes I do want to step up and take charge of this. Sometimes I want to go on a road trip and I love you, but you kind of suck at that. So let me plan the activities. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of women also think, it's bad when we talk about masculine and feminine energy, and it's bad for them to be in masculine energy. It's not, because quite often we default into masculine energy if we've been hurt in the past, especially at the hands of men. We quite often default into masculine energy. And if we're in a competitive environment, be that in the workplace or be that through sports, because the masculine energy is the competitive energy, whereas the feminine is the collaborative energy. So, it's not wrong to default into masculine energy. It's just when is it appropriate in terms of, your romantic relationship situation, and at what times is it appropriate? And also, as I say, there are people that have passionate relationships, but the actual relationship is really toxic. And that's because, one is in the unhealthy masculine energy and the other partner is in the unhealthy feminine energy. And so, if you are in that space where you feel like you have passion in a relationship, but it's not a healthy relationship, that's the reason why. It's because you're in those unhealthy energies rather than the healthy energies, which you can also get polarity in, but obviously live a more healthy, passionate relationship.
Yeah. So 2 things about that. One, my grandmother used to always say to me, God bless the girl that's got her own. So as a woman, before you get into a committed relationship, before you move in with someone, before you marry them, all of that, there are some masculine structures that you need to have in place. You need to have boundaries. You need to know how to communicate your boundaries. You need to have some financial stability in place. Even if you plan on becoming a stay-at-home wife or stay-at-home mother, you need to have some savings set up before you enter that relationship. And after you enter that relationship, more and more often, women who are in those positions ask their husbands to pay them a salary or to set up trust or things like that, so that, God forbid, if the relationship does, ends, they have that security. They can walk away knowing that they're not going to be destitute. So you have to have some structures in place within yourself before you commit to being in a relationship with another partner. And then, to your point about unhealthy masculine and unhealthy feminine, one of the things that people who have a history of unhealthy relationships struggle with, and often this history goes back to childhood, unhealthy relationships with their parents, is they have become so used to a chaotic environment that they feel that chaos equals love. One of the things that I see so often with my clients is that they start getting in healthy relationships, and sometimes they think, do I really love this person? Because it's not chaotic all the time. It's not hurtful all the time. We're not yelling and screaming at each other. And I've never been in a quote unquote loving relationship that didn't have that, because they were used to, again, from the very beginning of their lives, growing up in a household where people who said they loved each other were also always yelling at each other. So understanding that you can have the sexual passion and intimacy in a relationship and the vulnerability, and also have a relationship that's overall calm, and that a lot of your day-to-day at first, because you're used to an unhealthy relationship, can feel a little bit boring, but it's because you have this routine set up, because the 2 of you know each other, because the 2 of you kind of agreed on your roles in the relationship, that you're able to kind of get through the day-to-day things. And then you're able to, at the end of the day, have these conversations with each other that are so intense and that are so vulnerable with each other. You're able to, have the flirting and the sexual play and all of that, because you feel safe with this person. And you're allowed to have your intensity there because you've created safety in everything else.
I think it's important as well, not just for the woman to feel safe, but for the man to feel safe, create a safe space for him to be vulnerable as well.
Definitely. And, this is where it comes to what I mentioned earlier, this whole idea of understanding that we both have masculine and feminine energy, both genders, because I do think society has reached a place where we accept that women have masculine and feminine. Because, there was that commercial in the US from like the 60s or 70s with a woman singing, I can bring home the bacon and fry it in a pan, right? Like we accept that women can cook and clean and raise babies and also work. We don't talk often enough about the masculine side, that yes, men can protect and provide, but they can also be very nurturing towards their wives and towards their children. And they have feelings too, and they have emotions too. And being in an environment where, as a woman, you embrace that protection and provision from the man that you're with, but you're also able to have the emotional intelligence and maturity to look at your partner and be like, he's having a rough day. Let me create an environment for him to come and talk to me and for me to listen and hold space and not judge and allow him to have that vulnerability. That's important too.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Because I quite often see relationships whereby, women are nagging their partner and then they're wondering why the partner doesn't want to spend any time with them. And it's about that communication skill again, isn't it? That you're not going to get from your partner exactly what you want if you keep repeating the same behaviors. And if you by nagging him and nagging him and nagging him, that you're finding that he's withdrawing and pulling away all the time. And you think, well, I'm going to nag him some more about that. It's going to result in the result that you want. It ain't going to happen, is it?
Well, and it's funny because there's two things I can say about that. One is creating some structures for quote unquote nagging. And what I mean by that is, my husband and I have regular money dates where we talk about how the finances are and everything. And it's funny because I will say that, and sometimes someone will make a face like, oh, that doesn't sound great. And it depends. There are times that our money date is, hey, are the bills paid? Yeah, bills paid. Cool. Let's have pizza and watch a movie. And that is the entire money date. And there are times where financial issues do come up where it's like, okay, we need to really be budgeting for this, or we really need to we kind of went crazy last month on, food delivery, and we should, take care of that and like slow down. And having that time set aside makes it so much easier because you have, again, this masculine structure where you come together and we already know that this is going to be the time where we discuss this thing. So no one's caught off guard, no one's over emotional. Like, we already know this is the time that we're getting down to business and handling this issue. The other thing is just in general, allowing yourself to look at things as this is not me against you. This is us against a common problem. And when you take that mind frame, it becomes so much easier I'm not pissed at you right now. I don't think you're a horrible person. But there is this thing and we need to handle it to make it for us to be closer. And that's the common goal at the end of the day, not for us to shout at each other, not for me to be mad at you, you to be mad at me. It is for us to just handle this thing and move on with our lives. Like, I don't want to deal with it any more than you want to deal with it. And then sometimes it comes to just taking a little bit of playful energy to it. I could yell at my husband because he didn't take out the trash. Or, I could squeeze his arm and talk about how strong he is and how like that trash bag is heavy, So
Yeah, it's an opportunity to be playful in those situations and be creative in how you communicate the same thing, but in a different way that makes him want to do the job.
right.
So, Keshia, tell me how best can our audience members get in touch with you? What's your best contact information?
So the easiest way I think to get in contact with me is I am chronically online again because, being a millennial. So DMing me on Instagram works really well because I check my DMs very often. And if you want to work together, again, I do both coaching and I do hypnotherapy. So we can talk over DMs, we can arrange a call, but sending me a message there is a really easy way to get started. And also, I'm at my name on Instagram. So Keshia Rice, KESHIA RICE. So I'm really easy to find.
Excellent. So any final words of wisdom around the topic of how to balance our feminine and masculine energies that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah. So you and I talked before we started recording about how I am a multi-hyphenate. I have various interests. One of the things is I have a degree in meteorology. And I think a really good way of understanding as a woman your masculine and feminine energy is we call it Mother Nature for a reason, because Mother Nature is sunset and rainbows, and she's also tornadoes and hurricanes. And I often like to think about rivers. Rivers are beautiful and they're flowing, but if they overturn their banks, they become very destructive. And those banks are your masculine energy. So as a woman, it is not about allowing yourself to free flow so much that people think that you don't have a brain and like you're just la-di-da, whatever happens. It's also not allowing yourself to get so rigid that people think that you're never fun. It's understanding that there's so much freedom and fun that comes when you allow yourself to have some banks, some self-discipline, some boundaries in place. And doing that is not restrictive. It's the key to having a happy and fulfilling life.
Excellent. Love that advice. And I really liked what you said about, giving the example around taking out the trash. The way that you could ask him could be around, saying how strong he is, and rather than nagging him to take the trash out. And just saying you're a really strong guy, and I love that about you, and that trash bag is heavy. I just was my favorite bit of this conversation that you shared, so thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we take life too serious sometimes. Like being in that playful energy, I think is one of the best parts of being a woman. We can get away with doing that.
And even if you are capable of carrying it out for yourself, it actually, it makes him feel more masculine, doesn't it? Doing something for you like that, the same as opening a door or pulling your chair out at the restaurant. Obviously those are things that we can do for ourselves, but that is his gift to us in showing us some respect. And I think it's nice for us to just say thank you very much. We love that. It's so lovely of you to do that for me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, men like to feel needed, and it's really hard in our society because so many women are educated and making money, and there are a lot of men who are very insecure about relationships because they feel like I have nothing to offer this woman. She's smart, she's doing her own thing, she's taking care of herself. Sometimes, you can remind your man, like, no, I don't need a man to open a door for me or to hold back a chair for me. But allowing him to do that, if that makes him feel good, then why wouldn't I do it? Why wouldn't I allow him?
Absolutely, 100% agree. So, Keshia, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom and your little fun, playful tips as well around how we can balance our masculine and feminine energies. And I look forward to having you on the show again.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
So on that note, it just leaves me to say, true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.